Hi everybody, welcome to a show that's got pretty much everything that you could possibly want. I'm not alone, Kenny's here, lighting up the boats in Glean here in Oosburn. Some people call it Glean, some people call it Glean. However, it's a port area where tall ships used to come. And this is a place of barges and barks, and the smaller of the sailing ships would come into this area. It's a place of pirates, it's a place of smugglers. And why here? Because if you go a little bit further up in the distance behind this building over yonder, you might just be able to see the curve of the Millennium Bridge, the Tyne Bridge. All the ships that didn't mind paying the huge amounts of tax would stop up there, and all of their stuff would very, very easily be got into the city. But if you wanted to do a little bit of slightly more surreptitious, you'd come in here, or a little bit further down even, pulling up next to places where you could get stuff off before anybody's really seen it. There's a phrase that we use, and Kenny, I'll take that little one back off you, man. Thank you, mate. There's a phrase that everybody uses now, and a lot of people believe that it comes from this very area. And the phrase is "no worries."
Right.
Is it a phrase you use?
I've always thought, yeah, but I always thought it was Australian.
No worries.
No worries, mate.
No worries. But it's actually no worries. W-H-E-R-R-I-E-S. A wherry was a transport barge that used to bring coal. So you'd have labourers getting ready to take the coal out or to put the coal onto a barge. Remember, you didn't have big machines and cranes and stuff to do it. You did it all by hand. And they'd wait for a wherry to come in. And if they came down to the river knowing that they had 12 ton of coal to put on a barge, they would look and they'd shout to their friends, "No worries." And that would mean they could take their time, have a drink, sit down, have a sandwich, no big deal. That happened here. People waiting to see whether there was anything to worry about right here. Amazing. But and I know it's a bit awkward, but we wanted to start here. We're heading up a hill to story after story after story. And also, before we go any further, Kenny, what I want you to do is, I have tiny little jar, and it's very important. Hold the jar close to your nose and take a deep, deep breath. Close to your nose. Don't let it out until you... Right, let it out.
Oh, mate, what?
Right, Kenny. You will never guess. You'll just never guess. However, that could have just saved your life.
Fucking kill it.
Back in the day, you would be doing this. You'd have been breathing down it and holding it close to your nose and walking around. Tell you more about that very soon, but let's get across and start our adventure. If you're wondering what this is, if you've just joined us, and please make sure that you share with as many people as you know. This is the East Newcastle Plague Trail. He's just got the plague.
Oh my God.
Could you liken it to anything?
No.
I'll tell you later on. You guys want to start guessing, if you've got any idea what that could possibly be, something that could save your life. I don't want any of the low-class kind of suggestions.
I always thought that "no worries" was Australian. Always.
Because it's an Australian phrase. But you got to remember that in Australia, They did coal mining, they did the same thing. I don't know whether they called the craft of worry in the same way.
Right.
Who knows?
Because Australians, I think I've said this to you before, they're the only race I know, right,
Uh-huh.
who ask a question and answer it at the same time.
What do you mean?
Like, they'll say, what's your favourite colour, blue?
Oh dear,
What's
dear,
your
dear.
favourite pastime, Paul?
Oh, hang on.
What's your name, Sheila?
Look at this. This is a bonus. You know, not very far from here, the Usburn tunnels. And this is probably where one of them comes out. This might be one of the blocked off ones. Strange. And the thing that I love about this area is, talk about making it a colourful thing. Now we're going to places loaded with spirit tonight in all directions. So keep your eyes open. If you see anything, take a screenshot of it, send it to us. Check out the time, send us a message. Keep us posted, because we're going up loads of stairs. And I know. No, absolutely. We're coming back down a lane. Staten, absolutely. She's got the love. What was what?
There's a big bump. Could be anything, but there's a big bump there, mate.
Dangerous building, keep out. We're coming back down the opposite side of here. Now, this has always been famous for sweeties. Maynard Sweetie Factory. Very first one was up here. Yeah, it was up here. And we're crossing over the Usburn as it stands. And there've been a few suicides off...
Haven't they made this all nice looking like in Southside?
It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Steel becomes an angel's shape, and you are... Somebody's ruined the whole thing, haven't they? I hate those tosspots who do that kind of thing. Especially when it's so beautiful to start with.
Yeah.
But a place of beauty and yet a place of tragedy at the same time. Very sad. Now, this is where we're going. But this here, don't know whether you can see it, we're going to be doing a circle. We're coming back down here. That, back in the middle 1800s, was known as the Murderer's Escape. And that road up there.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you the full story of why a little bit later on, but we're going up here. Don't take glasses past this point. Big sign, don't take glasses past this point. You take your glasses off, you'll fall down there, won't you? It's a free trade. So the story here, this place used to be called Molly's in the middle 1800s. And a woman by the name of Molly Smiles owned it. She was the landlady. Everybody loved her, thought she was amazing. And this area here, down this side, it's being used as a beer garden at the moment. But back in the middle 1850s, Molly Smiles, Molly's Bar, and Molly ended up dying pretty much right here because one of the carts bringing barrels of ale came, parked up. She was one man short, so tried to pull the barrels off herself. Right. One barrel landed on her, killed her, wiped her out altogether. She died here, and up until 1919, when the place was rebuilt, she was regularly seen taking snuff and drinking out of a small cask of beer just down the side. So that's the story of Molly. But there's another ghost story attached to it. In recent years, the pub landlord there had a pet cat. Right. And the cat was greatly loved by everybody. Used to sleep on top of the jukebox while it was playing. Used to wrap itself up on one of those tall stools, just sit there purring while everybody kind of stroked it. And it was called Craig David.
No.
Craig David. There's a a painting of Craig David on the wall
There is.
inside the bar. Now, Craig David died, and for the next few months and up to the present day, every now and then somebody will feel a cat like push past the leg. They'll hear a purr. They even said Craig had a particular smell, and if you're sitting on a table, you get a little waft. Amazing and lovely. I think it's lovely. So that's the story. But we're heading up here, remembering that that is the great city of Newcastle upon Tyne in the distance. And not forgetting Gateshead. And this was one of the places that gave you the very best view of the Great Fire of Newcastle and Gateshead. And also, when the place flooded, and there was a massive flood, some of the tall ships washed up these streets. Entire tall ships on top of the quay, right the way up the whole side. Amazing. Oh, one more thing about the...
Imagine it though.
You can't, from here, could you imagine the view? Amazing. It's just incredible, because it's all there to be seen. And this is a part of the city that nobody comes to.
No, you don't.
Something else about the trade, the free trade inn, was it was one of the favourite places of an animal. Chas Chandler
Right.
used to drink in there, and on a few occasions he took the animals into the free house of the Rising Sun,
I was going to say the Rising Sun, yeah.
and they drink so much of that to get out of there. I got to get out of this place. But don't let me be misunderstood, because that's where they were. But on top of that,
Can you any more songs in there?
no, I'm not going to bother. The biggest claim to fame for that place was Chas Chandler once took Jimi Hendrix in there.
Oh,
That bar.
oh my God, man.
Right, up here we go. Now,
You know, it's worth having a drink in that bar. I just see the picture of the cat on the wall and then
And-
the whole history.
and Hendrix, this is Albion Row.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a little bit about Albion Row when we talk about this amazing school. But before we do, because this is amazing and we're going to be walking around it and have a check into it, we're going into the grounds. However, first things first, let's get over here. Perfect. As I say, on the way back, we've got an interesting little journey to make just down the side there. Now, we can't get in here, in there. We're going to try to get around here if we can get in the car. I don't know whether they've locked it up. Well, there's a gate open there, so hopefully we can get in. It's here. You've got all this amazing thing on Ford Street, but it's what was here. And at the present moment, it's not a lot, really. And yet, one of the most fascinating stories that I discovered about this whole place happened here. On the building, watch out for Spirit, because a murder took place here. An incredible story. This used to be a pottery. And you know, you've got Pottery Bank, and you've got another potter just slightly higher up. A lot of business went on here. Even back in the day, this was one of the poorest places in all of Newcastle. People who couldn't afford to live in the city would live in tenements and tiny hovels out here. And I know there's a lot of new modern buildings and apartments overlooking the river, but here was a pottery shop, a huge pottery. And it was owned by a man called Charles Stewart. Charles Stewart was the potter, and one day a group of two men came in, burst into the pottery shop that was here, and tied him up, gagged him, and gave him a battering with lumps of wood, this area here. And as I say, light it up, because you never know what you might see in amongst the darkness here. Charles Stewart was taken to hospital in Newcastle Centre. While he was there, he said that he remembers that one of the men had a very strong Irish accent. And he said, to be honest, I've heard that accent before, a lot. And then he said, I know who it is. It's somebody else who worked here with him. He used to get the pots out of the kiln. And his name was Charles Smith. Now, Charles Smith denied it. Said, no, it wasn't me, I didn't do it. But he had exactly that Irish lilt that his major attacker who beat him had. Same voice. So Smith was arrested and eventually taken into the town moor and hanged by the neck until he was dead. Because while he was awaiting trial, Charles Stewart died of his injuries. Now, when Charles Smith was standing on the gallows, he swore to everybody. He says, do you have any last words? And he says, yes, I swear I did no harm to Charles Stewart nor any man. I did not do it. And then he said something which, if you're just about to die, he said, I bear him no malice, because I can imagine how persuasive the dying remarks of a man can be. And on his deathbed, he said, it was him.
Right, yeah.
So he ended up getting hanged. He swears that he didn't do it. Now, this is where it gets a bit juicy and a bit different, because in Europe at the time, and we're talking late 17s, early 18s, something really nasty was going on. Slaves captured in Africa were being bought by certain people, and they were killed and skinned so that they could use their skin to make beautifully dark brown or black book covers. They tanned them like you would tan leather. And it wasn't just slaves. It was also prisoners who were hanged. Let's have their body, let's skin them. And you know, you hear about Buffalo Bill in the film Silence of the Lambs. They wanted the books made out of human skin. On occasions, they also did it with poor people. People would just biff somebody, knock them out, drag them there and say, have you seen the tattoos? What a lovely book cover that would make. I mean, this is human beings to other human beings. Unbelievable. So, the body of the hanged Charles Smith was taken down and it was brought to the surgeons' hall in Newcastle. And the surgeons, a whole group of them, took all the skin off the body so that ordinary people could go into the surgeon's hall and see how the human body worked. They could see the veins, they could see the arteries, the dead man lying there totally skinned. And the skin, which covers quite an area, was covering almost a whole wall on display. Now, I have to be careful, because the man I'm talking about's family still carry a bit of weight in the city. A man called John Bell was a book collector. He collected ancient manuscripts. To be honest, he still has manuscripts in museums throughout the north. Allegedly, he put some money down and asked if he could buy the skin of the murderer. And a deal was done. The surgeon's hall kept the body without the skin, but the skin, allegedly, went to him, and he had it tanned, prepared, and he also had it transformed into a book cover. And then, whoever did it, we think we know, whoever did it then wrote a book about the murder that happened here, there, just there. It happened there, which is mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And put that story in a book bound with the killer's own flesh.
Crazy.
Wow. And it's out there. In 1818, in one of the books, it announced that that book of human flesh has been hidden because it's cursed, because it may well not have been a murderer. It could have been an innocent man.
Yeah.
Now, that's just what happened just there.
It's not crazy.
However, we want to talk about this, and we're going to have a walk round. Let's go in the car park and just have a mooch about. I presume it's open so we can... Now, I don't know whether you can see, the thing you want to light up, Kenny, is that.
That big top one.
What does that remind you
That looks
of?
like a Chinese pagoda.
F.W. Rich, the architect who built this whole thing, built that and what's up here,
Right.
based on a Burmese temple. So you weren't very far wrong.
There you go.
And how amazing is that? Now, couple of things. First of all, those windows there, just be aware, because this school opened up in the late 1880s and it ran to the 1960s. It had 900 pupils at full capacity. Half of them were little infants and the rest were juniors, slightly older kids.
Right.
And there is a ghost story attached to this place. A man by the name of Thomas Comerford, blimey, I'm sorry it's a bit wordy tonight, but let's go and have a look, and you can keep your eyes open for ghosts and spirits as we go. This is an enterprise centre now, and has been for a little while. But there was a man, a teacher here, and his name was Thomas Comerford. And he was from the south, and a lot of people described him as being too sensitive to do the job.
Right.
And Comerford's spirit is said to walk in the courtyards here. Now, I'm presuming that's here.
Courtyard.
It's one of the courtyards. I would imagine there'll be a few more. But he said the place you can see Thomas more regularly are those two windows way up there. Can you get to, let's do one at a time. Right. Do this one around here. If anybody sees anything in the window, Comerford apparently, he used to get wound up by the kids. Now, to be honest, they were of an age where he shouldn't, because juniors are just bairns, aren't they? They're just tiny tots. And let's see if we can find him on this one. It could be on any side though, right. But apparently he's there every day. And Thomas Comerford used to take panic attacks. He used to get skittish and scared. And when he did, he'd take a class, and at the end of the class, instead of going to the staff room, I presume, what he used to do was, he used to go up to the tower underneath the Burmese pagoda, and he would stare out of the windows and sometimes hammer on them, and people could look up and they saw the anguish on his face. They saw how uncomfortable he was. And it was later discovered that Comerford, just before he came to work at... Oh, hang on. Did you see that as well?
I did.
What was that?
I don't know.
It was something in that window, wasn't it?
I thought somebody just like looked out.
So did I. I thought there was a person
Might
there.
be someone in there.
Might be, might not.
It might be someone's house.
It's
I
possible.
don't. It's no light on now.
No.
There is. I can see lights on.
Oh, can you? Okay.
Downstairs. I wouldn't bother putting your torch there.
Right.
No.
In case they live there.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
better safe than sorry. We don't wish anybody any inconvenience. But just before Comerford took the job here, something that the other members of staff here had no clue, he had 2 children. And the 2 children fell in a river in Oxford, which is where he was from, right. And they both drowned. He took them out to the park for a day, had them fishing for little tiny tiddlers like you do, yeah. And they fell in the river. He wasn't there, and when he came back, they were gone. He found them a little bit further down the river, just face down in a riverbank, and they were aged 4 and 5, which is the age of the kids he was teaching.
Right.
So when he was seeing the little bends, he was getting wound up, but it wasn't because he wasn't a good teacher. It was just he was seeing his own children in the faces of those that he looked after. Now, the problem about this place, and we should check it out completely, absolutely, look at this. Amazing architecture. Rich did a great job on this. But I mentioned Albion Row is the street that's just over here, running up. Well, Comerford had an apartment on Albion Row paid for by the school because he was moving into the area, but it was early doors, so they'd give him an apartment on Albion Row. One day, after staring in anguish up there, and he stayed there 2 and 3 hours after the school had finished, crying and weeping and watching the children go home and be collected by their mums and their dads. And he looked down every day at this. And after a few months, he went back to his house in Albion Row and he put a rope over one of the beams and he hanged himself. And he wasn't found for a couple of days because it was over a weekend and he wasn't teaching. On the Monday, he didn't turn up and somebody sent someone to find him and they found him. Now, the problem with Comerford was he's still here. People still regularly see his spirit. They see a grey shape, sometimes a black shape, moving across some of these courtyards. And they say every time you come here, he's staring out of one of those windows at the top. So we're going to go around the sides and see if we can find him. And remember, he could be on any of these courtyards in all directions. And if you come out ghost hunting here, just remember his name was Thomas Comerford.
Right.
But don't call him Tom or Tommy. He was a Thomas. And you can imagine all the kids pouring out. Yeah. And this was one of the very first schools anywhere to be heated by hot water in big metal pipes. Right. Now, when I was a kid, Atkinson Road, Aki Road School, we had those. We were still heated by the same way that this place was from all those years earlier. Yeah. And if you could, you'd try, on a cold day, you'd try and sit next to where the pipe was.
Yeah, St Mary's Anson Cutlets, like that. And I don't know why I want to sin, because I'm not a Catholic, but there you go.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. But the other thing about this place that you should know, and I think this is super cool, it was built with the best reasons. They said, why did you want to build it here in the poor part of town? And it was said, because we can provide them with decent food in the middle of the day that they would never get at home. Right. So they gave them a more balanced diet. And the other thing, one of the other promises that they made to the parents, who frankly had nought in this part of the area, at the very beginning they said, the only way of happiness for us is for a child to be able to do everything for itself. So to create a rounded, balanced youngster who could grow up to be independent. Yeah. And I think that's super cool. Super cool. And there's the other pagoda on the opposite side. Now, you say it could be those windows. Could be those windows just the same. And if you were anguished and looking down and you were seeing all those children coming and going, look at that. I mean, it's magnificent, you know. It really is. And how many people have even noticed this? You don't even look up to you. You don't even look up to see these things. And I mean, when you look around it, even the windows, the like porthole windows, it's this amazing. It's just designed beautifully, isn't it? What?
There is. Is it just like, is that just something?
Oh, no, there's something there.
Is it just like a black?
No, something just, it was like something leaned in and leaned out. Are you talking about bottom right? There's a grey thing there now, Tony.
What actually is that though?
I don't know. But there's a grey thing. And it moved before. No, that one's all right. That one's still there. Look at that. And look at the one on the left-hand side.
Yeah,
Can you see your face and eyes?
Well, that's what I thought I saw.
Can you see eyes, Tony? With your own eyes?
Not sure what it is.
What the hell is that? No, this... What the hell is that?
There's a security thing there, isn't there, on that one?
Yes.
It's like a little round security thing, but there...
There's nothing but there's grey. And on this side, if you come over to this side, can you see eyes? Kenny, come over here. There.
Yeah, that's what I thought I saw anyway when I first seen it.
Like your nose and eyes.
Yeah, so what is that?
I've no idea. I would love to think it's Thomas. I don't think we can get around any further, but you might be able to further up.
It's on? Yeah.
There's just another way of saying it, Kenny, this way. There's something there. I hope somebody on a big telly can blow up that bottom right pane, because it looks like there's a crack or a break or something that we couldn't see when we were closer to it. But it's still this window. Oh, hang on. I'm getting something up there now.
The other window
Second
now.
one up, right hand side.
Hey, look. All right, yeah, the second, the middle.
Middle.
Yeah.
Middle right.
That looks like a cat.
What the hell?
Like cat's eyes.
That's what I saw at the other one, unless it's moved over.
But it's looking, it's like looking here. Isn't it? It's like looking at you.
I know. Oh, there, look, Kenny. Look at the window that we originally looked at.
Yeah. Oh, what the hell's that?
What's
then?
that? It's, do you see it's shining?
Yeah, what is it?
Look, then it's gone if you move. It's like a cat's eye, you know when you see
That's
it?
what I thought. It didn't register at first, but then when I went, oh, look, it looks like cat's eyes.
Wow.
I'm mesmerised now, like. Oh, there. That's peculiar.
What's the chance? You know, can you remember when we were in Jesmond and we caught that full figure at the window?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't know what it is about windows, but that's the room.
That is the room there, the same room.
Nothing here.
No, no. Nothing in them. Apart from a weird plant growing there outside. The hell is this?
Now, this is one of the rather more juicy places that we've come for.
Oh my God!
Yes,
Gravestones
cemetery.
next to the school.
It's a cemetery,
Is
absolutely.
it?
So, this is called Ballast Hills, and there's a dozen creepy and fantastic stories about this place. So, we're going to take a solid look at the whole thing. Why is it called, Kenny? Yeah, I shall test you. Why is it called Ballast Hills, do you think? Ballast Hill Cemetery.
Well, it's got to be something to do with ships, the ballast, surely.
I made a clue for you guys to say ships being balanced.
Right.
Well, when a ship's empty, not carrying any cargo, it's prone to tip over from one side to another. So they used to carry sometimes stone, sometimes tons of coconuts,
Right.
anything they could just to give the ship some weight. Then they'd get to wherever they were going to load up, and they'd take all the ballast out, which meant there were hundreds of ships coming to the Tyne loaded with nothing,
Right.
so that they could pick up coal or whatever else, what other trade goods. So you had tons and tons and tons of ballast.
Right.
So they brought it up here and created a hill, and we're on it. This is all ballast. A lot of them are really hard to. There's.
Read it when you got there, look. Is that Latin?
No, I just think it's woolly worldy, I think is what it is. Now, this is also known as plaguey fields because it's a plague cemetery and a plague pit. And if you come down, hang on. I'll show you where the next bit is. I've done my due diligence and can explain these things to you. Again, you can see the trains over yonder just crossing in the distance, train crossing the bridge. Keep your eyes peeled. You never know what you're going to get in a place like this. It looks probably the plainest part of this cemetery. And the other thing is some of the paving slabs beneath your feet, I don't know whether you've noticed, but Kenny?
Yeah.
3 of their children in 1775, buried not here. They used to be dotted around, but they took them down. 3 children died in 1775. Robert Goskite, and he died in 1804. So 29 years later, he died.
Look how old.
And the child was aged 4 months. Horrific, really sad. But this is a plague cemetery. The plague hit 3 times. Cholera hit the same town 3 times.
It's got one of them, successful principle.
Yeah. And again, overlooking all of the windows. But the stories that are here, this area, and it looks like the dullest. If you look behind you, Kenny,
Yeah.
it's a bit of a nothing, bit of an out.
Uh-huh.
But it goes right the way over here. Back in the day, remember all of these paving slabs are graves.
All graves?
They're all graves. They run down in all directions. This is why, to this day, some people call this place Plaguey Fields. But the interesting thing about the pit was, we're talking poor people. Now, if you are wealthy and you died of plague,
Yeah.
the thing that would happen to you is you'd be given a proper grave, you'd be put in a casket, you'd be sealed in so that none of the plague could get out. But if you were poor, they stuck you in a hole. That's all they did. Now, what was also true as to what happened here was that sometimes they'd go to the hovels that existed around here, and if somebody was poorly, they had a cough, or they were just beginning to exhibit the first sign of the plague, they'd take them and they'd throw them into one of the graves,
Right.
alive. Now, this happened to one man, and his nickname was Old Bennett.
Right.
And this was in the 1600s. And Old Bennett got thrown into here. Now, imagine this flat,
Yeah.
dig a hole,
Throw in.
throw them in, 50, 90, 100, cover it up, and then the next load of ballast comes, chuck it on the top, chuck it on the top, chuck it on the top. Did you hear that? Did you hear that?
It's like a bell.
It was a bell.
Kenny, your camera will probably catch stuff because it's night vision, like around here, if you want to
Yeah,
point it
why
that
don't you
way.
do a walk? Follow the path.
Down here.
Yeah, do a circle, because it's a...
Bell there.
We just heard a bell. If any of you did at home, please confirm. Yeah, they're all got names. But this guy, Old Bennett, he was put in a pit. He was ill. he was wheezing, he was coughing. Now, if you had the plague, and maybe the thing that I did to Kenny at the very beginning, I'm going to tell you on the other side of the half, because it's amazing. It's mind-blowing. But it's to do with the plague. Now, if you had the plague, how would you know? You're coughing, getting a little bit of blood. There's different types of plague. One was like a pneumatic lung thing, and the other was buboes. Now, you get a blinding headache. Your skin feels super itchy all the time. And then all of a sudden, something the size of an apple would appear on your neck, underneath your arms, on your groin, on your testicles, top of your legs, apple-sized, and it would turn black. And after it turned black, it would begin oozing blood and pus, and it would be running down your leg. And every square inch that pus oozed down your leg was prone to have another bubo. It was feeding other buboes. On one occasion, in Newcastle, during the second plague, a nurse said that she could save people from dying of the bubonic plague by sucking the poison out of each bubo, shrinking it down to size. But the only way to do it was like you would squeeze a spot, except she was sucking it in and sucking with all of her might to try and get all of that pus and blood out of there. And she did save 2 or 3 people. And then she died, guess what, of plague. But back to old Bennett, who was here. Old Bennett was thrown in with 90 odd other plague victims here. And before they managed to cover it up with the newest layer of ballast, he woke up and he was underneath dozens of dead, pasty, pale bodies. So he did what anybody would do under those circumstances. He dug himself out, looked around, made sure there was nobody there, got out, and he legged it. And he ran off back into the houses, back to his hovel. But the thing that he decided to do, he blamed all of society because somebody grabbed him and thrown him and given him up, sent him to his death while he was suffering from the plague. He had plague symptoms, but he didn't die. It's like some people that do suffer the worst of a disease can exhibit all of those symptoms and still survive. And he was one of those. He had buboes, he had the headaches, he had the cough, he had the blood spit. And what he decided to do from then on was to go to places that sold food, that sold fruit, and spit on them all. So that the people who had dictated that he would die would also catch the plague. So old Bennett survived. How many he ended up killing, maybe we'll never know. Right, let's head down and see what we can see.
What about the necromancer?
Yeah, good idea,
yeah.
Good shout. Especially here.
Yeah, definitely.
I think what you want to do, Tony, as well, is take a look around all of these corners here, because there's
yeah, I think Kenny's camera's going to pick up loads
possibly
of good
more.
stuff. Yeah, the night vision.
No, for sure. The numbers of people who died in this vicinity are amazing, though. In 1636, 5,600 people died, half the population of Newcastle at the time. Then cholera came. 3 disease epidemics in 1853. 1,700 died. 100 deaths a day. Dying within 90 minutes. Dehydrating from the inside out. This was an incredible and scary, scary time. Anyway, let's necromance and see what it is we get. Watch out for words. I would love a Bennett, if there's a Bennett there. Is there a Bennett? You can see how the banks have been built up as well. What do you see?
Well, there's different names, there's lots of Robsons in here.
That wouldn't surprise me.
Over there.
We're common.
I thought this was William Wallace, but it's not. It's William. I don't know what it is. Look, William.
Yeah, it's hard to tell, isn't it?
It's hard to tell.
I just think it's a shame. I understand that you've got flat stones that you can use for paving, but these were people bought these for their loved ones. They should be up on display. They shouldn't be being walked over. William Bliss.
Yeah. See, they're buried here.
They're not buried here.
I want to see the canopy, can they?
The burial place of John Hunter. John's not here. He's under there somewhere.
Yeah.
It's.
You don't realise, do you, until you actually come here and see it.
No, absolutely. You've got to come and check this place out. More graves over here. Just across the way, outside the cemetery where Tony's walking right now, you'll see it's a big scrapyard, but we're not far from where Holt's started. Holt's removals.
Oh, right, yeah.
Apparently, Mr. Holt was working for Bainbridges in Newcastle. He was a removal manager, and he went in for a job to become the manager of that department, and he didn't get the job.
Right.
And he needed some more money for his family because he had more kids on the way. So he said, I think I'll start my own removals then if Bainbridges won't hire me. So he got his first carriage, his first cart, and started moving people, and he became internationally Holt Removals. Amazing.
Small acorns and all
But
that.
this, you know, it's an area of grass that people would completely walk past.
Oh, you would never know what's happening.
And yet the story inside is incredible.
We need to split
Absolutely.
the stream now.
Right. Well, we're going to necromance and do a proper job on this. Right. First things first, Kenny, on the other side I'm going to tell you about the jar. Okay?
That would be good.
This little jar.
See, I've inhaled it now.
What's it all about? I'm not going to smell it.
No.
However, we've come to the halfway point, which means we would love you to join us on the second half, where we're going down Murderer's Escape, and there's a whole host of stories along the way. However, if people would like to join us, if you're a supporter, Gaza, thank you very much indeed. Keep spreading the word. if you're not a supporter but you would like to join us on the other side, what do they have to do, Tony?
Just join the channel. So on the Facebook post, there's a little link. Just click that, join the channel, become a supporter, and the video will be there for you. Same on YouTube, just join the channel from the link in the video description.
It will be straight there. We're going to continue the show, of course, as always. So if you've gone, you've gone. Goodbye. Thank you very much for watching anyway. Part 2, let's get it kicking. Now, before we go any further, Kenny, the little jar. Yeah. Now you said, are you trying to kill me? And it made you cough. Yeah. And it caused you a major problem.